Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning for all those who are watching us. My name is George Ward from Ortitul Consulting from Portugal. We are here with the 17th episode of the Berry Talks conversation with leading global players, a meeting place to know personalities, companies, technologies from the berry industry from all over the world. I'm here with my colleague, co-host Thomas Darora from Italian Berry. How are you, Thomas?
Hi, fine. I'm very well, George, and thanks again for meeting us today with all together with our audience. Today, I would like also to say hello and to Huan Zhang, who joined us and accepted our invitation to be here in our Berry Talks. Huan Zhang is the founder of consulting company Twinkle Star Berry. He's based in China, and he's been acting in the berry industry for the last few years. Welcome. Can you introduce yourself to our audience and say some words about who you are and what is your role in the company?
Yes. Hello, George and Thomas. Thank you first of all for inviting me for this conversation. And my name is Huan. I actually started getting to know berries from my educational background in the United States. I actually did a PhD at Washington State University with Dr. Lisa DeVetter, where we spent a lot of time working in the field with growers in the northern high bush soil grown blueberries, raspberries, some blackberry and strawberries. That's how I started with the berry industry. And after that, I actually worked in Costa. First job is working in Costa in China as the technical manager for Costa. Due to many reasons, I left Costa in a year. I started doing consulting, and what I'm trying to do now is to help the Chinese industry through bridging the gap between the Chinese industry and the international industry in the aspects of technical and business. So that's what I'm doing, consulting in technical and business.
Thank you very much for your answer, Juan. We've met each other last year through LinkedIn, and we have been having a lot of talks in between. We had the pleasure to meet each other this year in Europe, and I had the pleasure also to present a recording for a conference, the second edition of the industry of blueberries in China this year. And thank you for accepting our invitation. Of course, you have a background on berries, and as you started in Costa as a technical manager in 2011, and you have been consulting also besides this experience. What you saw when you finished your studies and you start coming into the berry business in China? And what you saw in that moment and what you see now. Can you explain the differences before and now?
Yes, like you said, I'm quite young into the industry. Maybe definitely compared to you and Thomas and to a lot of audience here. I'm quite young. I only have 4 years working experience in the berries. Costa was my first job. I knew very little of the industry in China back then. My understanding of the industry, in 2020 when I started working, maybe isn't very accurate, but I will answer this question to my best knowledge. First of all, I want to clarify that China isn't a new country to the berries, to the blueberries. China isn't a new country. It actually started in 1980s from the northern high bush. But China is a really hot topic in these days, mainly because it's booming in one province. It's called Yunnan province, where you can grow low to no chill berries. Growers harvest from October to May. If you go higher elevation in this province, you can actually harvest all year round. And that's what a lot of companies are doing now, trying to make all year round supply in China. So given that background, so I think a lot of focus now in China is in Yunnan. So I want to talk about this province, what I've seen now compared to maybe 4 years ago. So let's talk from the industry side first. I remember around for in 2020, 4 years ago, the production area in this province was roughly 6,000 hectares. But if you look now, I don't think there is official data of what's the area now. But based on my data collection, I think the industry doubled in the last 4 years. I talked to a lot of people in the industry, and we're trying to put the numbers together, trying to guess, what's the area planted under tunnels in this region. And our best estimation is roughly 11,000 to 12,000 hectares in this province alone. Well, this province is big, for China is big. This province alone, I usually compare to Spain, is the size of Spain, this one province. Um, Secondly, if we think from the grower's perspective, this industry was developed mainly by Driscoll and Joyville Hortifruit. Joyville actually is a Chinese company who joined venture with Hortifruit. So those two used to be the biggest players in this region. They actually developed blueberry um, market or train the consumers in China. So they have done it for a few years, and now because of everybody is really into blueberries, and a lot of people are now know blueberries. So all kinds of players are in this industry now. What I mean, all kinds of players in terms of growers, from peasant farmers who has less than 1 hectare of farms, they still transform that to blueberries, especially this year. If you drive around this province, couple regions, you will see lots of new tunnels, lots of irrigation, fertigation machines. And because these little farmers start to realize, okay, I can make more money from growing blueberries rather than growing peppers or tomatoes or even grapes. Um, and besides the peasant farmers, we also have big guys, international big guys, especially with the Sequoia entering China. They bring some of their licenses to China, and so if you go now, you see the players. Just like I said, it ranges from less than 1 hectare to 100 hectare or 200 hectare farm is very difficult to get, but sometimes you will find it. Thirdly, I want to also talk about the breeding programs. 4 years ago, since I started working in the industry, I don't remember we have any breeding programs that are open. Like I'm not talking like Driscoll was one bringing Costa and Mountain Blue MBO to China, but they have the genetics within the system. Hortifruit joint venture with Joyville, but they kept the genetics with themselves. And beyond that, if we are looking 4 years back, we growers didn't have choice. But I think Planaza firstly entered, and they opened their system to growers with a membership fee, and they actually developed quite quickly in the last 4 years, and followed by big guys like Four Creek. Four Creek brings his collections and Sequoia collections to China. So in the breeding program side, we actually have more options for growers. And lastly, I want to touch a little bit on the marketing companies. In the past, we knew, Driscoll and Joyville together really really developed the industry in China. But now we have other big players like Price, Agrovision, Oz Blue. They are also making noise in China.
Very
Okay.
interesting. Thank you very much. You have spoken about this rise of the Chinese berry sector, which is, of course, driven by both consumption and also production. In terms of the productions, which crops have become more relevant in China? We have seen and we have spoken now about the blueberries, and what about the berry sector in general, so including also the other berries?
Well, so that's actually a good question. I personally believe, so if we're talking four berries, blueberry, raspberry, strawberry, blackberry. Strawberry historically is significant in China. I think China is the top producer of strawberry. I think we produce 3 to 4 million tons every year, covering 130,000 hectare. China definitely is the biggest strawberry player, but our strawberry season or genetics are a bit different than the West. We use more Japanese and Korean genetics and short days, so we produce for the winter during the winter. And there, Driscoll actually is testing, producing in the summertime. Actually, they were selling strawberries. I saw that in the market last month. The price was really good. But strawberry is a very difficult one to compete in China. I believe some companies will definitely do great. It's a difficult one. You're competing with hundreds and hundreds of small farmers. An investment of strawberry, as a farmer to start is very low. As for raspberries, I actually hear some rumors that raspberry, Driscoll is putting more emphasis in raspberry in China. They're trying to get more raspberry area planted in the next few years. I personally believe raspberries and blackberries, or let's say kinberries, will be the next potential hit of the berry categories in China. But because people can still make quite profitable money from the blueberries, I think the focus and the man are still in blueberries. I know some guys actually started testing, big guys, small guys in Yunnan province, started doing some trials with the raspberries, but it's just at a very, very beginning stage. Um, we also need a very good blackberry genetics. Chinese can be picky in terms of choosing a fruit. So a sweet blackberries can be popular than raspberries.
I have a question regarding the berry sector in general, and it's about the distribution. How critical is distribution, so logistics, so the connection between the growing areas and the actual markets? Is this a critical point, or has it been managed properly so far? What do you think?
It's a very good question. Logistical wise, in general, in China is lagged behind. However, blueberry industry in Yunnan, the blueberry industry in Yunnan is I'm not expert in that, but I think it's probably one of the most of.
We had some problems with the connection, I think.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
now,
yes,
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Okay. Where did you lose me?
We just started for a few seconds. You can. You're talking about logistics, the logistic in Yunnan.
Okay, so I was saying, I will start over. Logistic in the fruit industry or cold chain in general in China is lagged behind. It's a pity. We are one of the largest fruit producer, vegetable producer in the world, but we actually don't have a very sophisticated cold chain system. However, the blueberry industry in Yunnan, I think it's probably one of the most advanced cold chain system in the fruit in China. So in terms of blueberries, I think they're doing pretty good. But when relate to your question in the last, why is strawberry sometimes can be difficult in China? Because Chinese prefer Japanese or Korean genetics. Those strawberries are very fragile. So if we have a very poor logistics system or cold chain, so if you want to grow from one region and sell to the other region can be very difficult. And that's why when you come to China during the strawberry season, you will find most strawberries are consumed locally in China. I think if we want to grow the kinberry industry and the blackberry, raspberry, we do need to put more emphasis improving our cold chain system. Otherwise, it is going to be a disaster.
Yes, yes, definitely. Um, as the market has been evolved around the Chinese blueberry demand, there is therefore a trend of new investors coming to China also to be involved into production. Is this a positive thing for the Chinese industry, or is it a potential challenge for those smaller sized local growers to develop the local market? What can be the outcome of this presence from foreign investors?
Um, I think it's both. I don't think it's a positive thing or it's a challenge. I think these two things exist together, and I always also think competition. Healthy competition is good. I think healthy competition is very good for the industry. Um, there definitely are positive things. For example, I truly believe without those international companies entering China 10 years ago and now, the industry wouldn't be such mature or big. But I also believe with this booming, the Chinese companies will always find their positions as well here. It's definitely going to be a challenge for small growers from my perspective. Sometimes I have arguments with my colleagues here in China. If you look into the fruit industry in general in China, you rarely find big. I'm talking fruit industry. You rarely find a significant big farms will be very sustainable. Like some people would argue, okay, the small guys in China, small farmers will beat the big farms. Well, I actually hold different opinion. I think in blueberry industry, if you can find a good piece of land in Yunnan with a good price, with good water resources, I think the big farm will outgrow the small farmers in Yunnan. So um, that being said, I think what is really a challenge for people, uh, for the local growers, is who doesn't know how to control their budget, or let's say how to control their resources.
Got some interruption again. Can you hear us, one?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, yeah. You were
You
talking
get
about
frozen.
the, yes, the budget of the small growers they're trying to control.
Well, I think if the growers can maintain or lower down their management cost while not jeopardizing their food quality, they will always make some profit in Yunnan province. Yunnan province, I think the one of the question we'll touch later, but Yunnan province has quite limited resources. If the industry wants to grow, but the land, the water will limit its growth.
Mhm. And generally, when you say small growers, how do they access the market? Are they somehow joined? Do they sell their berries to local traders, or how do they sell their berries?
Well, you actually touched both. All those scenarios exist. There are co-ops. They exist and they work together. They rent a cold storage and they put the fruits there and sell it together. Then we also have growers. As the demand in Yunnan is still exists the supply. So if you just wait at your door, there will be local traders to pick up your fruits as well. And I think it will be difficult for those guys when the industry grow. You don't have a system to maintain your food quality, or sometimes those people don't even have a cold storage. So they pick today and they're waiting for somebody to pick today or pick up the fruits tomorrow. I believe those guys will be facing a lot of challenges, as you ask.
And generally, the level of mechanization, both in the fields and in the pack house, how is that?
Um, Another very good question. I don't want to be very critical about our industry, but I have to say, very low. Our technology isn't that low. 'Cause we all in Yunnan, if you want to grow blueberries, most guy choose hydroponics because the soil in Yunnan is quite clay, difficult. So substrate, pot, fertigation machine. A fertigation machine is cheap. Pots are cheap. Substrate, depending on who you source it. So to start those, you can find good quality equipment to start. And but because you want to increase your profit, so you maybe put more plants into 1 hectare. If you put more plants into 1 hectare, that will prevent you from using a lot of machines, and labor at this moment is still affordable. I don't see many companies going to like in Spain or like in US that a lot of machines. Even in the Driscoll system, a lot of growers they are trying to put more plants into 1 hectare and get more money from the fruits. And that's in the farming side. In the packing house, we have conveyor belt and human. Sorting through machine, some company tried Unitech BBC because our market, our consumers have a different preference towards fruit quality. So sorting or packing bag machine, you will get a lot of rejection. For example, if you have we have a lot of grades in fruits, um, some people have 5 different grades, like below 10 milliliter, 10 to 12, 12 to 15, 15 to 18, 18 to 20, 20 to 24, 24 plus. So sorting by machine can cause some mistakes, and you will get a rejection at the market. And we have a different requirements in terms of the bloom on the blueberries. If we sort on the machine, to some degree, you will wipe off the machine will wipe off the bloom, and you will get a lower price if your bloom doesn't look great. So most time, it's hand one by one, pick one by one. We don't even pick like I don't know how to describe it. Like in clusters, you
PlayStation,
pick.
like playing PlayStation.
Yeah, one by one. Sometimes some varieties tend to have a red bottom, still red. So you have to check if it's red. If it's red, maybe it's a defect fruit.
So,
So
from that point of view, in terms of how the local grower takes care of the product, this is definitely an advantage, probably to most of the imported fruit, which basically go through more handling, have a longer shelf life. They have been traveling maybe for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks, while locally grown and harvested fruit definitely looks much more attractive, fresher, brighter, with more bloom, and this can be an advantage for local fruit. Is that true?
I want to make sure I understand your question. You are talking domestic fruits
Yes,
versus the import.
versus
Yes,
imported.
when Yunnan comes to production, the domestic fruits always sells higher than the imported fruits. Just like you just described, simply because you have a better products towards a Chinese customer. I'm not talking a better products for everybody. For Chinese market, locally or domestic grown fruits, you get a better uh, you get a better price compared to imported fruits. Um, uh, Also, small farms tend to have better looking fruits compared to big farms because big farms needs to consider the cost you need to put into that. If you have 100 hectare, you have to consider your harvesting intervals. But with a guy who only has 1 hectare, even 10 hectare, they can harvest every 3 days maybe.
So basically, the good growers in China are meeting the consumers' preference, and there is maybe in other products there is a preference towards imported fruit, while with berries, also the domestic fruit is gaining so much popularity.
Yes. Blueberries usually gain more popularity of the domestic fruits. There are some period, several months, when China has less production, import fruits will get a better price. But when Yunnan province, we're talking Yunnan again, going to Yunnan. When Yunnan starts picking, as early as October, we are talking no chill, low chill. The price usually is higher than the imported fruits. And
Okay.
I think it's probably one of the reasons. Of course, those big international guys want to supply all year round. With Peru, with the Yunnan, they can do it. They want to do it. Another reason is what we just discussed. They can actually get a better price if it's domestically produced.
Uh, Juan, you have mentioned several things here. The domestic market has a different approach. I've seen lately, I don't know if you've seen it also, Thomas, a lot of the merchandising, or at least the marketing of the blueberries, especially out of the Yunnan season, which is November until May, they are sold like grapes in clusters, in individual punnets. This is becoming a trend that the Chinese develop, copying the model that you see in the grapes, or it's just a small scale approach to approach a different demand and a more, let's say, season product. What you can tell about this?
If we want to summarize it's a niche market. It's a niche market. However, you actually brought a very interesting example in terms of packaging or different. It's basically same fruits, but you have different forms or different packaging sometimes. When it comes to marketing, packaging is very important in China. We In our culture we tend to if we visit a friend, we sometimes bring a box of fruits. And another good example would be when it's Chinese New Year season, you will see, for example, Driscoll last year would have a dragon fruit box with one box of blueberries, one box of raspberries, and one box of blackberries. I think they were selling like don't quote me on that, but I think they were selling at like 30, 20 to 30 euros per gift box for that. So that is our culture. So what George is describing is when usually it's northern habush duke. When they prune the duke, they tend to leave 3 to 5 buds, so they can have a concentrated ripening. And when growers harvest duke, they just cut it from the cluster and put it in a box, sell it as a cluster blueberries. That price usually is higher than individual berries. And
That's what I've seen lately in the last 3 4 weeks, and especially in LinkedIn. And that was somebody sharing this information about selling in an individual punnet in a cardboard punnet. It was looking very perfect, and a lot of people were asking how you can pick everything together without having more ripe fruit and less ripe fruit. So some people ask me, they using special products to conserve the fruit after they pick to maintain that aspect? And actually, there's nothing. It's a fresh fruit, and it's very pleasant to see how is brought to the market in this packaging. It's a smart and clever idea. It's basically the tradition to offer fruits when you visit a friend or family in special occasions, and this is also adding the value that you were mentioning about the packaging. Packaging is quite important to penetrate the Chinese households. You also mentioned here labor costs, water. I've been looking for information, and between the beginning when the industry started, it was according with my information, the cost of a picker a day would be around $6 something, and nowadays is around 20. Yeah, with the new landscape and the golden era of the the low costs and the costs rising in the last years, do you see challenging environment for the Chinese berry industry? What is your idea on this?
okay, are we talking labor alone or challenges in general?
I'm talking about picking. The information I got is that 2013 it was paid per day around 50 yuan, so around $6.95 $91 per day, and nowadays it's 150 yuan, so to $20.73. So with this increase after almost 10 years, above 10 years, 11 years, do you
Mm.
see also the cost rising, the competitivity of the industry lowering? So how you see the evolution? It was a golden era for the growth in China.
Yeah.
People make a lot of money, but
Uh,
you're going to see. You mentioned already competition between workers, companies, new investors coming to China. Do you see any um, bottleneck situation for the growth, especially now the blueberries, but also other berries? What is your opinion on this?
well, I think the challenges for the blueberry industry in this Yunnan province, if so again, we're talking Yunnan province because I think that data may be quoted from Yunnan. Labor cost is so two costs are very high. First is land, and second is labor. Of course, construction of these tunnels, irrigations are expensive, but the unique thing in China is land is very expensive. Sometimes I explain to it's expensive and limited. I work with a lot of international friends. When I explain the land cost here, they were just shocked. For example, I need to convert to different units, but um, to get the land now in Yunnan, if you want to get 1 hectare of land, um, China has a new land policy published in 2020. just to secure its food system. So a lot of land are actually allocated to growing rice, corn, those row crops. So the amount of land for fruits, the amount of land for fruits with some tunnels are very, very limited. So for example, George, let's say if you want to come to Yunnan, find a good piece of land, trying to grow blueberries, if there is pomegranate planted on it, you want to get that piece of land, you have to compensate the grower first of all. Let me do a quick calculation here. It's right. $30,000 per hectare.
Wow.
And you don't own the land. The ownership of the land is not at each individual. You have if you want to rent that piece of land, first, compensation fee can be, I'm talking average price, $30,000 per hectare. And then rental is also expensive, from my perspective. Let's do a calculation here. Rental is like $4,000 to $6,000 per hectare per year.
That's
So
expensive.
if I'm not wrong in my calculation, so land, the limited land is probably one of the primary limitation for this industry to grow exponentially. So that's first limitation. Second is water. Getting water is not difficult, but getting good water is very difficult in Yunnan. A lot of good regions for growing berries can it's not, they don't have much water resources. So last factor, I would say maybe
Does
it's
the region you are growing? Sorry, you are growing in altitude, right? In a Union area,
in
in altitude.
23 altitude or
Okay,
elevation or altitude.
elevation. Because you are growing in elevation,
Elevation,
there's some difficulties of water availability.
yeah. This province is elevation goes down from northwest to southeast, and a lot of good regions are in the southeast. So not only for agriculture, the government actually is diverting the water from the northwest to the agriculture regions, and of course, where are agriculture, there are a lot of cities and populations. So they are diverting the waters to those populous regions. But it's still limited. First you have to allocate the water to the cities, to the peoples, to the villages, and then you consider giving that part of that water to the agriculture. But this year is great. Last year was quite dry even until now, and if you look at the mountains around the farms, a lot of trees, those pine trees, they died. You see big patch of red pine trees. It basically dried out. This year the rain comes earlier, 1 to 2 months earlier than last year. This year I think we have plenty water. But with the industry, trying to expand, everybody wants to find a good climate, get less risk of frost, and still can harvest early. So in a few very popular growing regions, the water resources will only be more limited.
That's a good close up on this question. You mentioned a lot of times in our conversation Yunnan, but there's other regions where you also said that the strawberries are important. Do you see any developments of the other berry category being planted in other regions, having the same level of importance as Yunnan, or not? What do you think is going to happen in the next 5, 10 years?
I personally believe like in some historical important regions, there will be some growth in the future and maybe in the starting maybe next year with some new genetics, but not as a level as Yunnan. Yunnan, um, sometimes I compare it's like Agadir or Morocco. You you just hit in the season that most regions don't have fruits. But if we go to other regions, around the Yunnan, there are some macroclimates that are very similar to Yunnan. That's still booming, but I consider that part of Yunnan. If going north, we're talking northern Hebush or northern Hebush regions. That's that region. When that region start picking, we have a lot of fruits in the market. Consumers have a lot of options beyond blueberries. You have grapes, watermelons, peaches, nectarines, apricots. You just for consumer wise, you have a lot of options compared, to the winter season. So the blueberry price in the northern Haibush region usually is lower than Yunnan. However, there is an interesting thing in China. I don't know, have you ever uh, uh, encountered this? It's called solar greenhouse.
I've seen it. I've seen it. I've seen it.
So,
We had
so yeah,
we had Thomas and I. We saw at the presentation from a Chinese professor researcher where the last I think was last year. Last year he presented that in Italy, and
okay,
he showed the type of greenhouses and the solar greenhouses, like how they
yes,
use it in winter to anticipate and protect for the frosts. Yeah, you've seen it.
yes. I think this is interesting to explain to the audience as well. So solar greenhouse, basically most of the regions in China, when it's in the winter season, it's sunny and dry. So people invent this solar greenhouse, which they have half of the wall is like it's like insulation, and they have a tunnel that's facing south, so they can collect the heat during the day, and they have a blanket, so it can be automatic or manual, so they can close it in the afternoon or at night to keep the heat in the greenhouse. So they are actually, in my opinion, mimicking a climate where there's no frost or no temperature below zero. It's always below above the freezing point. So we have roughly, as the best data I can collect, 2 to 3 thousand hectare of those solar greenhouse of blueberries. And
That's already significant, huh?
this industry is booming in the north. That's in the north, in the northern Hebush, and we are doing the blueberries, strawberries in the same way. Solar greenhouse, um, collecting the heat during the day, keep the tunnel warm at night. And in this industry, yes, it's booming, but it's still mimicking the Yunnan province. And due to a lot of challenges, the yield under this system and the managed cost and the construction cost in those systems, I think it's going to be very difficult to compete with Yunnan. Again, I think it's simply there's just so much demand than the supply during that period. Those guys can still make a lot of money. But if the Yunnan industry can grow to meet the demand in China and in the Southeast Asian countries, I think the solar greenhouse in northern region will be challenging for those guys. So I touch a point. I think China is also in a good location for exporting to Southeastern Asian countries, and we actually have people starting doing it. Driscoll, Drawing Mao, Driscoll, River King, those big guys in China, they are exporting to Southeastern Asian countries. I think Driscoll this year have tried exporting blueberry, raspberry, blackberry, in even the strawberries to some Southeast Asian countries.
Interesting.
This is definitely an interesting challenge. Yes, I think we have come. We are now coming to a conclusion of this conversation. Do you have any more questions, George, from your side?
No, we focus a lot on the Yunnan area and blueberries, but the country is huge, and for me, I see some more potential probably in other areas. That the question is which next berry will be besides the traditional strawberry, and now with the hype crop, the blueberry, especially in that region, what's going to be the next one? uh,
Yes,
that
I think one summarized it well, that he sees a good potential also for the caneberries, raspberries and blackberries. But there is definitely a huge critical point, which is logistics and the cold chain, which in China is still a major question mark. And we all know that blackberries and raspberries require a very strong cold chain in order to make it work, the distribution. I think we had a very interesting overview of the potential of the winner area, which is growing very quickly. And what I was interested in is about what we learned about how the growers are taking care about the quality, and how this is uh, getting a premium on the market. So not always a very strong mechanization leads to the goal, which is getting a better result. In this case, for the more local market, for the high end, also a traditional way of packing and handling the fruit is giving good results. This doesn't mean that, from what I understand, the industry is not looking towards expanding, because China is a big market. You have demanding customers who are willing to pay a premium for local product, and you also have a big export market, like you were mentioning. I
Mm,
think the other good, interesting points you mentioned are about managing the labor, the cost of the land, and also the water resources, which you mentioned. That good quality water is still something not freely available, but it's more scarce. So I
yeah,
think we had a very interesting overview on this market and the growing area, which I think, from many points of view, is leading also the development of the berry industry worldwide, and that the
yeah,
presence of so many international and global investors and growers and breeding programs is also a sign of that. So,
yes.
thank you very much.
Thank you, Thomas, for the summary. I actually, if we have time, I want answer.
Yes.
I think I didn't finish answering George's question about other regions. Um, Historically, there are five regions in China, very very big. Maybe those five regions they have more than 10,000 hectares of blueberry planted. But from my limited knowledge, I personally think uh, some regions are just, I think, randomly in the past point out by some officials or industry people say, "Oh, this is a good region for blueberries." Actually, it's not. But there is one northern Highbush historical region. It can be really important in the future for regrowth. It's Shandong province. It sits along the sea. It has a mild climate. Uh, this industry is big in northern Highbush. I think it boomed maybe 10 years ago, and it's winding down. And I think with new genetics, with substrates, pot, grow, northern Highbush, this industry has a huge potential for innovation. But genetics comes first, then with the new growing system. So that's one growing point, in my opinion. Second growing point is if we look globally, where are the best northern high bush region? Are I shouldn't say best. This will offend a lot of people. Not the best. Where are good northern high bush regions? I spent a lot of time in the Pacific Northwest. I think that region is very good in terms of the plant development, the the yield. Uh, if I related that climate to China, some regions in the northwest part of China can be a potential for the growth, for the new development of industry. It's possible. And the third growth point, I think, is still, sorry, George, we go back to Yunnan, still in Yunnan. Yunnan is a mountainous region. 80% of this area is covered by mountains. So a lot of guys now are focusing from November to May is because they find a basin or they find a valley between the mountains and they grow there. But if you go higher in the elevation, which a lot of big guys, including international big players, they're going to a higher elevation, trying to use different genetics, different management or horticulture management. They're trying to get the same genetics harvested maybe from August to December or even June to December. I would say from June, yes, people are harvesting from June to August now, and they're trying to harvest at different elevations, different techniques, different genetics, trying to harvest from August to December. So that's a third growing point, and it's happening. Big guys, they are doing that. So they are trying to get all year round supply from Yunnan as well.
Okay, that's one of the points of extending the season for other regions where you have the northern bush implementation, and even extend the season with other crops to complement on a farm base on a year base also. So
Mm.
thank you for your explanation. Thank you for the dedication to be clear to us about what is your opinion. Thomas already wrap up, make a summary of our conversation today. One, I want to thank you for accepting our invitation. This is the 17th episode of Berry Talks. I would like also to thank you, our colleague that's not here, but it's also for her, Siam. She was not available today. Um, I want to thank our audience. Today we came back again with strength with a very interesting conversation about the berry industry in China. Once again, thank you, Thomas. Thank you to our guest, and hope to see you very soon in a berry talks in the near future.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Thank
you,
you. Thank
everybody,
you.
and thanks to our audience as well.
Thank you, George. Thank you, Thomas.
Bye bye.
Again
Take
for
care.
this invitation. Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.